The first presentation this evening is going to be by Kaela Gomizel, Ruth McEvoy and Deb Oliver, and they're going to be talking about the iPad and why it remains in the corner. So thank you very much.
Hello everybody attending the Allied Health Professionals Forum today. My name is Ruth. I am an MND advisor with the Motor Neurone Disease Association of Victoria, based in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia. I'm co-presenting today with Kaela Gomizel, who is speech pathologist from Calvary Healthcare Bethlehem, Melbourne, Victoria, Australia, and also presenting Deb Olive, coordinator, MND Victoria volunteer program. So let's get started. And who are we? So MND Victoria are the statewide provider for providing care, service coordination, volunteer support, information and equipment to 454 Victorians living with motor neuron disease or MND. Calvary Healthcare Bethlehem is the statewide provider of neurological and multidisciplinary allied health supports to people living with MND. Bethlehem and MND Victoria have long enjoyed a collaborative, close working partnership. Next slide, please, Kaela. So the current program. The MND Victoria iPad program is 2 years old and is coordinated by our equipment officer, Sandra Nichols. The aim back then, when the program started, was to reduce social isolation, to keep people socially connected. In July of this year, Deb surveyed our iPad users about their use and their knowledge regarding iPads and technology, and Deb will talk about this survey shortly. The survey revealed that people wanted and needed more help using their iPads. Furthermore, we knew that Sandra was grappling with some complex technological questions regarding the iPads. MND Victoria also received an Australian Commonwealth Government COVID grant of $25,000 to use to purchase devices. And so all of this led to the review of the program, and we asked ourselves the following questions. How can we better support our people to use their iPads? How can we best target who receives an iPad? What role can our MND Victoria volunteers play in this support? And this collaborative project between Bethlehem and MND Victoria is work in progress, and we do want and seek your feedback and questions. Thank you, Kaela.
Thanks, Ruth. I'm Deb, and with the iPad review, at that stage we had 28 people had allocated iPads, and we received responses from 23 of those people with a varying experience with the iPads from 6 months to 2 years. Feedback from the respondents was that during COVID, their iPads had been a lifesaver. We had been in a significant period of lockdown in Victoria, but it kept them busy and entertained and in contact with family and friends. But a number of people commented that they wanted to be able to communicate and use their iPads more successfully. Thanks, Kaela. So in this slide, daily use of iPads was reported by 8 respondents, but 7 respondents reported that they never or only very occasionally use their iPad. There are a number of challenges that people identified, dealing with how big the iPad was and how they were able to use it as their disease progressed, and also there were issues with security and confidentiality noted as well. Thanks, Kaela. When we ask people what they used their iPads for, there are multiple and varied uses, but staying connected with family and friends and engaging in their community were key uses that people described for their iPad. But there were a number of people as well who responded that they didn't know what they could actually use their iPad for. Thanks, Kaela. So this slide summarises the preferred apps as reported by respondents. Again, it indicates the variation in apps and technology, the way the technology was used, and it also suggests the complexity of trying to provide support and guidance to help people become more confident and competent in their use of their iPad. Thanks, Kaela. All right, so the things that we took away from the survey was that clients do want support to be able to build their capacity in using their iPads. When we asked whether sufficient instruction was given in how to use iPads, 9 of our 23 respondents said no, there was not. It also became apparent that an iPad will not suit every person, and so it was important for us to ensure that we use a speech pathology or OT assessment to ensure that the features of the technology are matched and appropriate to the person. We identified that support would need to be varied and that it would need to be goal-based, dependent on the individual goals of the client and what they wanted to use their iPad for. And we are confident that we will be able to identify and work with skilled volunteers to support and help people to become more confident in their use of their iPad. Thanks.
So the priority for the iPad program, historically, we know that demand for MND Victoria iPads has generally exceeded the supply of iPads. So we know that prioritizing who receives the iPad is crucial. People, for example, with bulbar onset, changes to speech, those who are socially vulnerable, and those Victorians who have fewer funding options. So in Australia, the current funding options are My Aged Care or MAC for over 65s. It's a means-tested, slow to response system. There is a waiting list and funding can be limited. So funding is available, but there is a wait. National Disability Insurance, or NDIS, is a Commonwealth-funded program available to under 65s. It's tailored, it's not means-tested, and it's fairly quick to respond. So this group could have funding available to them fairly quickly. The most vulnerable group would be non-residents, those who are refugees, have no funding options whatsoever other than the money in their pocket. So we can begin to prioritise who receives an iPad. And we do acknowledge, as has been stated already, that iPads are not the optimal device for everybody. Thanks, Kaela.
Well, I just wanted to chat a little bit about the assistive technology considerations that as a therapist you go through when you're doing an assessment. We do what's called feature matching, where we start with the person, get to know them, their interests, the things that are important to them, and learn and establish what goals it is that they have to use their system to do. Some people might use their system to want to support them to communicate or stay in touch with family, maybe accessing social media or taking and sharing photos as a way of staying socially connected. Some of the other considerations that we take into account is family and care support, whether they have Wi-Fi at home, and their hand function and the rate of progression, because any of these factors will help to contribute to determining what is the appropriate system for the person. So this slide goes through some of the different hardware and software options. So with the MND Vic iPad program, the main hardware that is available is the iPad. There are a lot of other devices around as well. So there's Samsung tablets, dedicated, augmentative, and alternative communication devices, light riders. So those are the actual hardware itself. And then there's a range of software that can be downloaded onto the device to suit the person's needs. So I think, what we just wanted to highlight here was that we are always sort of starting with the person, getting to know them, learning their goals, and then matching the right device to the person.
Lovely. So the intent of this Tech Check questionnaire is to provide a valuable snapshot of the technical knowledge and use of people living with MND. It can be discussed, this questionnaire can be discussed between the advisor and the person living with MND, between a speech pathologist and the person living with MND. It can be used face-to-face, in hard copy, or electronic form. Ideally, these questions would be asked early on in somebody's MND journey, especially when people have got speech and bulbar changes, or what we would deem as at the right time. We believe that having these crucial insights from people living with MND, that this really informs the process of matching the right device to the person and knowing the support they need. Thanks, Kaela.
We developed a bit of a flow chart for a couple different reasons. So one of the reasons that we developed a flow chart was because that this new process is going to be a change in our clinical practice, both as speech pathologists and MND advisors. And we wanted to be really clear and support the education of both of our teams so that everybody's aware of the process. The other thing that we really wanted to highlight was that throughout the whole entire process, there is significant collaboration and consultation together between the allied health therapists and the MND advisors and the volunteers. So for example, if a speech pathologist does an AT assessment and is going to recommend an MND Victoria iPad, we place the request and then liaise with the MND advisor and may flag that this person may benefit from volunteer support. When the volunteer then gets involved, they can liaise with the advisor and the speech pathologist throughout the process so that we're all on the same page and can support each other and the person living with MND to achieve their goals as easily as possible.
Okay, and so the other element of what we've done is to really develop this role of the MND volunteers. And the aim of the volunteer role is really to help people build their capacity and confidence in using their iPad. Volunteers will be matched with clients based on the goals of the client, and we'll work, we expect, with that client for 4 to 6 weeks, seeing them once or twice a week to work on their specific goals. The volunteers will be prepared to ensure that they're familiar with basic iPad functions and a range of app uses. And the goals that clients and volunteers might work on together can be everything from how to charge their iPad to how to access and identify various apps, or how to share photos and emails. The goals will be different for each client, and the way the volunteer will work with the client will be to help the client to learn how to do things themselves and become confident. And it's anticipated that most of our volunteers will work with clients in a remote setting. Thanks.
So the desired outcomes of the iPad review is really about targeting iPads, the MND Victorian iPads, for those who really need it, those with vulvar onset, early changes to their speech, people who are presenting as socially isolated, and those who are more financially vulnerable. MND advisors always, as a matter of professional practice, refer and liaise closely and work with speech pathologists, so that work will continue to ensure optimal assessment for the optimal device. MND Victoria would like to offer standard and mini iPads, and will continue working with Bethlehem. The aim of the review is to match the person living with motor neuron disease with the right device and the right support to use that device. Thanks, Kaela.
So where are we at the moment? At this stage, we've recruited 6 volunteers to the team. We are developing a training program for our volunteers and working collaboratively with Calvary Healthcare Bethlehem to do that. We anticipate that MND advisors will start referring clients to the volunteer program in early January, and we are looking at ensuring that ongoing liaison between the volunteer and the speech pathologist and the MND advisors is part of the program. We will develop the training program in December 2020, and once we start with the matching of volunteers and clients, we anticipate that we will repeat the survey in about 6 months' time. Thanks.
Thank you so much for joining our presentation. We just want to say and acknowledge thank you to Joe and Sandra from MND Victoria and the Speech Pathology Department at Bethlehem Hospital.
Thank you.
So Kaela, Ruth and Deb, thank you very much for that presentation. It was really fascinating and really, really practical and helpful. I'm just going to see if there are any questions for these ladies. So we'll just wait, because sometimes it takes a moment to type them. But in it, what I really liked, I liked your checklist that you had and you developed, because that looks very simple and very practical and very easy to use for anybody. But how did you come up with that?
It was really collaborative thinking between the 3 of us, and then running the checklist, thinking about the questions Thinking about what we wanted to know as MND advisors and support coordinators, as well as, for speech pathologists, OT. So we wanted to know, what was that baseline of people's knowledge and use of technology? Because we really didn't know. So we collaboratively developed the questions and then ran them past the MND Victoria team of advisors and support coordinators, who amended them, and with the equipment team as well. So it was very much a collaborative approach to hone those tech questions down, so we could, as succinctly as possible, either when we're talking with people living with MND, or we're electronically communicating with people, we could be as succinct as possible with easy questions that would also help people living with MND to think for themselves about, oh, okay, I hadn't thought about my data, or I hadn't thought about, devices that I could use.
Lovely. Thank you. There are some questions rolling in now. Sarah's asking, are there other options for alternative access?
Yeah, so I can take that one. So within the MND Vic iPad program, we are only providing the iPads themselves. However, often, the patients are linked in with allied health therapists. So I think it's I would leave it up to the responsibility of the therapist to be organizing alternate funding options for people that require alternate access. We were considering purchasing some Windows tablets, that have more options for people that have need alternate access. However, we sort of decided that those Windows tablets, they're expensive, with the communication softwares that would need to be downloaded onto them, and they require quite a lot of updating. And just at the moment, I think that at Bethlehem Hospital, we have a loan pool that we do to keep up to date, but it is very time consuming to keep everything up to date. And I think that, at the moment, that might be a little bit too much to take on for, this program.
Thank you. And Corey Libby asks if the checklist will be available for others to be able to see. They like the idea and they like to develop one for their own communication program.
Absolutely. I'm sure we could forward the full tech checklist to you, because there are sort of sub-questions within each question that you saw on the screen. There are actually sub-questions. So absolutely, I can forward that. We can forward that full tech checklist to you.
Thank you. And Marcella asks, are the specific apps you mentioned, are they available in Spanish?
I think Predictable may be available in Spanish. I actually don't. I'm from California originally, and I used to work with a lot of people that used to speak Spanish, but I haven't found that so much working in Australia now. So I don't actually know off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
No, thank you. And Amy just comments that the head mouse works very, very nicely with an iPad. I didn't know that. Just checking if there are any more questions here. There's lots of lovely comments talking about great collaboration between different services, and well done to you, and congratulating you on your work, which is very lovely. So I think that might be all the questions. But I'd just like to say thank you. That was absolutely brilliant and spot on, because it just makes you think of all the things that we could be doing. And I think I wildly underestimate the iPads. I think if somebody's got one, then that's fine, job done. But clearly, it's only half the story. So thank you very much for that.
Lovely. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.